I was lucky enough to be able to talk to Craig Ogilvie from the Revenue, heading up the MTD team for the Revenue, speaking to huge numbers of accountants across the UK. It seems like on an almost daily basis. And we chatted about all the different things that I thought was important that we understood from him. I started with a question which was as blunt as I could get, which was, as far as MTD is concerned, why?
Thanks, Giles. Can I just say big thanks for having me on? And I'm excited to talk, not just to you today, but everybody listening. This is a big programme that HMRC are delivering, and we've been at it for quite a while. I'm really confident we're going to go live in April 26th, and I know we'll get to that, but I'm really pleased to start with some of the basics, which is what I kind of call the why, the what, and the when. So the main thing is that your listeners know this, but this is the biggest change to income tax and self-assessment came in. Now, we've got a good track record having delivered Making Tax Digital for VAT to over 2 million businesses, and I'm really confident we will do another good job in income tax. But this is all about moving to a more regular schedule of simple updates. We'll give the customer a better view of the health of their business and their tax liability. And really importantly, we will help more people get their tax right. And we believe that will avoid the worrying cost of extra burden of when things go wrong. There's lots of other benefits in there. It's not just about the additional revenue that we believe that will be generated. It allows us to modernise our tax infrastructure to put us on a new platform. And that really will help us not just delivering Making Tax Digital, but actually providing better services in the future, more resilient services, better use of pre-population, and genuinely a better future. But I get that there is some cynicism around that, but we're really confident that this is the right thing to do.
Okay, so a couple of things you very casually said there that I should pick up on. First of all, you said that this will help people get their tax right. Secondly, you said that it will allow people to be able to have an idea of how much tax they owe as they go. So the two questions, I guess, that flow from that. First of all, how will it help people get their tax right? And secondly, if the Revenue are saying they can work out how much tax is due, does that mean you're going to start asking people to pay it as they go?
No, great questions. So it's really important I get across at all times. I'm not talking about every single person in the population. I'm talking globally here, but fundamentally there is a large part of the tax gap is due to failure to take reasonable care in error. And we believe that, and we're really confident that better record keeping will mean that customers are more likely to pay the right amount of tax. I think the thing about Making Tax Digital, and particularly through the quarterly updates, is that allows us to nudge and help people where we think the details might not be quite right. I think it also, as you alluded to, allows us to provide an estimation. Now, I should be really clear, lots of accountants that I speak to and lots of people in professional bodies, while we're seeing that as a really good benefit in testing that estimation, it won't be absolutely perfect for everyone. It will depend on your circumstances. If you're, for example, a seasonal worker, I can see a scenario where that tax estimation, you'll need to be pretty careful with a caveat on there. But we are seeing in testing that ability to estimate throughout the year, not just for the estimates of the quarterly updates, but from populating other income sources such as pay-as-you-earn, such as the construction industry scheme, we build that picture over the year. So we're confident better record keeping, and certainly the accountants I speak to, that better record keeping over that mass population can actually lead to better results.
Okay. And then obviously the self-assessment system that we already have, we're familiar with it, we understand it, it seems to do its job. In fact, the times when it doesn't do its job, it is often because it's the compute systems at the Revenue that don't seem to be, stepping up to the plate. You mentioned that VAT has obviously been successful, but we're talking about a couple of million people. RTI, of course, you talk about as well. This project, the MTD for Income Tax project, is far, far bigger than either of those two projects. How can we be confident that you guys will be ready in April for all of this?
No, thanks, Giles. So I think it's a question I hear a lot. That's why we're testing the system, not just with those customers that are testing it, but we spend significant amount of time and effort robustly building and testing the system. We're on a journey here. We're building this system over a number of years, and we're bringing in the cohort starting with 50,000 from April 26. So we will learn a lot. There's a huge amount of monitoring on the system, and my encouragement today is get involved in testing. Hopefully I'll be able to tell you a little bit later where we're up to in testing, but fundamentally actually getting real customers into the system gives us that confidence. I've been around tax for 20 plus years. I've delivered some of the biggest programs in HMRC. And I know we don't always get everything right all of the time, but actually there is so much that we do get right. And we do have a really strong track record, not just in the pandemic, but over a number of years. You've mentioned the Making Tax Digital for VAT, but also RTI, of delivering significant transformations. Being able to build this system, though, on a modern platform with modern APIs will make us even more resilient. So it's part of that bigger picture. And as I say, that's my confidence, but I take that confidence of having done this for a number of years.
And of course, we should explain to people who probably don't know this, but you were actually in charge of the furlough program back in 2020. You were the person who was responsible for that. So I guess where we're saying this is all happening quite quickly, MTD income tax all seems to be being a little bit rushed. I guess you live in a world where it's incredibly slow compared to the speed you had to act in 2020.
It's a really good point. And I get that quite often. People say, "Oh, how can the furlough scheme be stood up in weeks?" Now, the reason we were able to do that, so I was the project director on the furlough scheme, was because of the investment in digital services, the investment in our skills, the RTI program. Without these systems, we could not have responded at a time when there was the national emergency to respond. But it was building something fresh using a simple and set of patterns that we knew would work. Making Tax Digital is much more complicated than that. Many of your listeners will know that it was announced 10 years ago, but I genuinely could not be more proud of the team. Since the Small Business Review, I took over as the director of the programme in October, almost 2 years ago, and since that point we've hit every technical milestone. We've made progress, significant progress in our relationship with the software market. And we have started to build a real testing regime in public testing this year that gives me confidence that we'll be able to test the system and we'll be able to learn, because we won't get everything right all of the time. But, as the person in charge of leading the programme, it's my job to listen and respond if things do go wrong, so that we make sure that customers get a really good experience along the way. So I think the furlough scheme is very much a different kettle of fish. But yeah, I'm really confident we're going to deliver Making Tax Digital.
And you were talking there about people becoming involved in the project. Obviously, if we go all the way back to George Osborne first saying this might be a good idea, I think I and about 5 other people were interested in MTD at that point. We're seeing more and more people join the party, and in the recent months, a huge uptick in the interest on this. Obviously, as most people know, I wear 2 hats in this conversation. I also own a software company. And so look at it from that side of things. We're involved in beta testing for an awful lot of people. But you also have an awful lot of people who are already doing MTD.
I think the thing that gives me more confidence is if you look at our track record, this is by far our biggest year for testing. We are on track to go live. All of the confidence indicators tells me that we will go live in April 26. The language I use is not pilot. Is the reason I call it a test is this is happening, and it's that confidence that we're testing the system to make sure that it's ready. And I absolutely respect there will be cynicism, because we have had deferrals. People will be sitting here saying this is a government spokesperson who doesn't really know. No, I'm the person running the programme, and I'm confident that we'll go live. It's my job to get the programme live. The best way we can do that is by working not in a silo. We need to work with professional bodies, bookkeepers, accountants, tax agents, and we don't always agree eye to eye on absolutely everything, but the level of partnership's really strong. And I did refer to earlier the fact that partnership with the software industry has been a priority of mine over 2 years, and we recently actually got a few end of year tax returns from the 24-25 tests in, and some of the examples of working with Free Agent and Absolute were brilliant, actually, because we don't solve problems as they come up as a government technology department on their own. We work in partnership with software, and I was really impressed with both Absolute, and I'm not saying that, Giles, just because I'm speaking to you today, but both Absolute and Free Agent, and that partnership working together. As I say, particularly working with BASDA, making sure that we're working on this together. So we need to do it with customers, with accountants, with professional bodies and software. Easy things to say, but actually I think we've demonstrated in the last 2 years that we're in a much better place than we've been before.
And in terms of numbers, I'm not sure if you're able to share those with us. How many people do you have already within a testing program, preparing quarterlies, working towards year-end processes? How many people do you already have in what will be MTD for everybody already?
Yeah, so we got to the end of the first quarter, which most people will know is the 7th of August, and we had about 1,400 customers in there. We want more than that, but we thought actually it's a reasonably strong start. We've got more than that signed up, so we can see a sort of strong throughput. I think the software market is the thing that is really galvanized for me. So out of those 1,400 customers submitting via 21 software developers, I won't give any league tables. I got a bit of trouble in LinkedIn a few weeks ago about saying too much there. I want to be as transparent as I can, but as I say, the software market are onboarding. I think the thing that's important to note is, we need to all do this together. I could drive lots of numbers into the service, and if, for example, the software market didn't want those numbers in, or we just didn't have the well volunteers, we could have a bit of an issue. But as it stands right now, I'm confident I can see quite a strong pathway to a really good testing period. The final thing I'd say is, for those, and we'll have lots of experts listen to this that know tax and accountancy much better than I do, but fundamentally, if you know SA, it's the nuance, it's the level of diversity that's really important. So I could have 1,400 or 14,000. 14,000 of the same customer type is less value than, say, 1,400 with a really good spectrum. And I think the diversity in the customers we've got in testing is really strong. Lots of different income types, lots of different scenarios, and that's something that gives me confidence as we move forward.
And that's because, as you say, if you had 14,000 people doing the beta testing, but they were all the same basic sort of taxpayer, you would only be testing one aspect of MTD.
Absolutely. And I think in the numbers in those 1,400 by the 7th of August, I think that's part of what gives me real confidence, is that the diversity of those customers. As you say, we wouldn't want all the same customers. We wouldn't learn the same level of insights that we need in this testing period.
And talking about these different software products, again, I completely admit my bias in this question. At Absolute Accounting Software, we've produced bridging software, so people will use Excel spreadsheets and then be able to use the bridging software to get through to the final stages, also using potentially our software, potentially somebody else's software if they want to. Other people are talking about the idea of end-to-end bookkeeping packages where you have to use the product all the way through. The simple answer is that one size doesn't fit all. And as far as you guys are concerned, you're quite happy with the idea that some people will use bridging software, other people will use bookkeeping software. There has to be choices for everybody.
Absolutely is. And lots of people, I spend a big part of my job, as you know, Giles, speaking to lots of accountants, bookkeepers, tax agents, and there is a bit of frustration that some people feel that there is a narrative of it should be this way, or it should be that way. I think there's real customer choice in here. So there's a customer choice. If you want one product that does it all, that's there. If you, as many accountants do, have different choices of how you will manage your record keeping or your in-year quarterly updates, and then your tax year return at the end of the year, it is incredibly well connected. The system works. That's the choice you have. So if you do hear that it should be this way or it should be that way, that's not right. You do have choice, and there is significant choice that has developed in the market, and I think that will continue to grow.
One group of people we should acknowledge and talk about, there are cultural groups, there are religious groups, there are people, because of their personal circumstances, who simply aren't in a position to be able to deal with MTD for income tax. And you guys have acknowledged that.
Absolutely. And we've got a track record from Making Tax Digital for VAT of managing that. There is some people that for significant reasons, digitally won't be able to interact with Making Tax Digital. Now, it's our absolute desire that the vast majority will be able to use Making Tax Digital. I'm confident that will be the case. But in scenarios of, it may be geography, it may be religion, that you can claim a digital exemption, and we'll publish the guidance on that. We've also been really clear that as long as your circumstances haven't changed, you can apply to keep your digital exemption from VAT as well. So we do recognise that there is scenarios where that ability to provide that extra support is really important. We'll be publishing more guidance on that. Behind the scenes, we're working really hard to make sure the customer support is going to be really good. One of the things that I hear often is that if you're in testing, you don't have a wait to be able to get help from our customer support team. Now, we are working really hard behind the scenes to make sure as we go live in April 26, we provide the level of service, not just for those digital exemptions, but for customers when they need it. It's a big part of this programme as well.
And just a few questions about the ins and outs of all of this. Obviously, people at the moment are focused on the quarterlies, which is understandable as that's the first thing people will have to do. But actually, when it comes to the year-end routine, in many ways, it's very similar to what we have become used to over the years, but just an awful lot more of it will be pre-populated. Is that a fair way to look at it?
I think that's a good summary. I've had lots of debates on this, so it's not exactly the same, but it is significantly more similar than different. So I think your summary is absolutely spot on. I do think the pre-population of more data, such as the construction industry data, I think pre-populating quarterlies, I think that will be a real benefit. And I think both the PCRT guidance, the professional conduct in relation to tax, and our own end of year guidance, we've worked together to be able to publish that so that we're much clearer, because I do recognise when I meet accountants at events across the country that they are worried that it is more different. I would agree with your summary. It is more similar than it is different. We are still within the legal framework of self-assessment, and I think when time works through, the end of year process will be better, but it's more similar than different is how I would picture.
Okay, I feel obliged to give you the line that I know you're more than happy to accept, so let's do it. Craig, you talk about construction industry scheme, but somebody like you have no idea what it's like to be a builder. There you go, you can have your moment.
My dad actually was a bricklayer, and I do have memories of going with my dad with his bag of receipts to his accountant. So for those that say I don't have any real life experience of the construction industry, I do have a little.
And one of the other questions we keep seeing, so I will ask you for your opinion on it, what's to stop us just putting 4 zeros in our 4 quarterly returns and just doing everything after the end of the year as we would have done traditionally?
So, great question. Let's think about quarterly updates. What are they? They are not tax returns. And I know that's a message that we have been pushing quite strongly. People are worried that they are full tax returns. They're not. That's the first thing to say. They are unadjusted income and expenditure. It is really important that you do your absolute best to get them as accurate as possible. If you get it wrong, we listened to feedback and we made the quarterly updates cumulative, and you can correct them next time round. So if you do get it wrong, correct it next time. Don't panic. What I would say to answer the question directly, zeros are not appropriate. And that's not just our position from HMRC. If you do read the PCRT guidance, I think professional bodies have also been clear that that would not be appropriate. It would not align with the underlying digital records. And as a result, it wouldn't be the right thing to do, and it would not be acceptable. I meet lots of accountants. I think that it's probably unlikely that accountants will be, when they really consider it, will think that's the sensible thing to do. But if you are thinking about it, that won't wash, I'm afraid. You do have to interact with Making Tax Digital. If you get it wrong, that's okay. Let's get it fixed next time round. Zeros won't wash, though.
And my last question is the question I always ask on Tax TV interviews. If people can only take one thing away from our conversation today, what would you want them to be focusing on?
I think for me, right, 2 years ago, I was worried that a huge proportion didn't think this would happen, right? I know that the vast majority of the industry now think it will happen. Now, that's not to say everyone. So if you're sitting out there and you think this isn't going to happen, I think that moment of looking straight in the eye and saying, actually, I believe this chap, this is going to happen. That's point one. Point two is you need to prepare. You need to segment those clients. You need to be in touch with the clients. There's a whole host of actions that need to be ready. And just to mention a few of them, we've made it easy where you've got existing relationships to ensure your agent service account is in a good place and to map those existing relationships. But you still have to do it. Don't put it off. Map those existing relationships. And for each client, you have to sign up to Making Tax Digital. That will take approximately 4, maybe 5 minutes per client. So if you're a bigger firm out there, I'm being really straight with you that you have to invest the time signing up in advance of mandation. So they're the two things. Hopefully, if you are sitting on the fence, don't believe it will happen, you'll be more likely to believe after today's interview that it will happen. And if you are a believer that it will happen and you've not quite taken those steps, have a look on gov.uk, lots of material, an agent how-to kit, lots of YouTube videos. Give me a follow on LinkedIn. If you've got any questions on there, do reach out to me. I'm happy to have a discussion, a debate. I want to do my absolute best to make sure that the industry is ready to do the best job in Making Tax Digital. So I've taken 2 things there, Giles, if it's okay.
Craig Ogilvie, thank you very much indeed.